Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. Every week in your bulletin, you get one of these cool little prayer sheets from Pastor Greg that has a list of some verses to read for the week and also people to pray for. So with our wonderful Adrian, we decided to put together a little debrief for the week and setting you up for the readings and seeing how that works. And hopefully encouraging you to dive into the readings and just dive into the scriptures and have those be a part of your normal life if you don't do that already. So the readings for this week are Romans, in the book of Romans, and the last day of the week would be Philippians, where we're at the series we're currently in. But we're reading Romans 5 through 10 each day of the week. And I just want to preface this by saying Romans is probably one of the hardest books of the Bible to understand. And it's rich in theology and rich in just imagery and all kinds of things that Paul uses, argument style, and it's a very, probably one of the most studied books of the Bible. I don't want you to be intimidated by that, though. What would be really my best advice is to read each chapter this week and just kind of read them through and try to put any preconceived theological notions that maybe you come to the text with, and just read them through and let them speak to you. And don't try to figure out his argument style or what he's saying right away. Just familiarize yourselves with the way that he speaks, the way that he writes, his arguments and things like this. So a few verses that stand out to me that I just want to kind of emphasize that maybe you would be inspired by and choose to and be emphasized on your own or stand out to you. In Romans chapter 5, as we begin this, I think, first of all, Romans 5 and 6 are some of my favorite chapters in the entire Bible. Romans chapter 6 especially, talking about us being dead to sin and alive to obeying Christ. But in Romans chapter 5, verse 18 is probably one of my favorite verses. Therefore, as one trespass led to condemnation for all men or all people, so one act of righteousness leads to justification and life for all people. That the amazing news of the goodness of the gospel being available for all people. In Romans chapter 6, verse 6, one of my favorite verses there as well, it says, we know that our old self, the old person, was crucified with him, that's Jesus, in order that the body of sin may be brought to nothing, so that we would no longer be enslaved to sin. There's such hope and freedom in that verse. We are dead to sin. Is sin a reality? Is it out there trying to tempt us and snare? Of course it is. But we are dead to that. That promise is so powerful. It's been brought to nothing. I think sometimes we make sin way bigger than it is. It's important, but it says the power of the cross, the power of the crucifixion brought that to nothing. Romans chapter 7 and 8. Now, 7 is one of the chapters that I don't have time to dive into in too much depth, but that's the chapter where Paul says, the things I want to do, I don't want to do, the things I do, I don't want to do. What's interesting about that, and my take and reading of that, is Paul is describing a life, if you live according to the law or legalism, then you're destined, if you're trying to work up your own righteousness and keep the law by your own power or willpower, you're destined to fail. The things that you want to do, you won't do. The things that you don't want to do, you do. So if we're going to live legalistically, if you will, we're doomed to failure. But he says in chapter 8, verse 1, therefore there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, for the law of the Spirit of life has set you free in Christ Jesus from the law of sin and death. This wishy-washy, back and forth, living a life dependent upon the legalism, our own efforts, that has been put to death. You don't have to be afraid of that. You've been freed from sin. You've been freed from the law. You're free to live according to the Spirit and the flesh. So, may that encourage you this week, and I hope that does a little bit. If not, take it for what it's worth. Dive into the Scriptures and enjoy them. Thanks so much.